purposefully leave that very open-ended, in that I just want you to move your body. Again, in as many different ways as you possibly can. Do all the things that just kind of loosen you up a little bit. Move everywhere from the crown of the head down to the tailbone. And again, just really take a few moments here and explore. So let this be kind of dual purpose, partly to help just loosen up and warm up the body a little bit, but also to be used as a little bit of a check-in. So I want you to pay attention and just notice anything that might stand out to you. Any part of the body that might be feeling a certain way. Maybe you're noticing a little part of the body that might need a little extra attention throughout your practice this morning. Maybe everything feels wonderful and you're good to go. Whatever the case might be, I want you to just take it all in and just notice. So we'll take about another maybe 5, 6, 7 breaths here. Again, just kind of shift and move at your own pace, just like a lazy dog getting up in the morning who just takes his sweet time. I just find it interesting watching the pets get up in the morning. The humans hit the alarm and jump out of bed. The pets get up and, oh, they take their time, especially when the humans are running late. They really take their time. Stretch it out, wiggle it around. So be that lazy dog. Let's take another breath. And then we're going to start to make our way to seated. So by all means, indulge in a little bit more movement if that is getting you somewhere. But eventually, you're going to grab hold of your folded blanket here and just set that blanket back behind you, and you can sit on as thick of a prop as you like. So if the hips are feeling a little bit tight this morning, if the low back is feeling a little bit grumpy this morning, elevating the hips is always a good thing. So sitting onto something a little bit higher. You can always roll up the back of your mat if you don't have a blanket, anything else that kind of gives you that little bit of a lift. And then a couple different options. So we'll just start whatever cross of the legs you like here. But you can use your feet to help support your legs, or if your hips are feeling a bit more open and you want a bit more stretch, you can take your feet out of the equation and just, again, find what works. So it's a balancing act between making the knees happy, making the hips happy, making the back happy. In yoga, we call this posture Sukhasana, which translates to easy seated pose. Easy seated pose. I know some days, some bodies, it feels really easy. Some days, some bodies, we just need a little bit more to get there. So do what you can to really try to feel your sit bones level so that we're not excessively leaning to one side. You want to feel like your pelvis is pretty symmetrical here, pretty level, and just let your palms come down to rest wherever they naturally fall on your legs. Give a nice big shrug back of the shoulders. So I want you to really start to open up and lift a little bit to the chest, not to that point of being unnatural or stiff, but to the point of feeling, a little bit more open. Very, very commonly, we tend to just with time start to wilt a little bit throughout our time seated. So do your best to just stay active, stay tall, engage a little bit through your core. Close your eyes and try to let the jaw muscles soften so that rather than any sort of clenching or tension around the teeth and the jaws, everything just feels really nice and soft. And we're going to just take a few moments in stillness here to breathe. So I want you to just try to focus your attention inward. So as opposed to connecting with all the things and beings and whatnot going on around you, it's your chance to connect inward and to really just acknowledge yourself. First of all, finding and granting yourself a bit of gratitude for making it to the mat this morning. Some days that's an easy feat. Some days it can be a little bit more challenging. So again, just acknowledging this time that you've gifted yourself this morning, and really also allowing yourself to accept that gifted time. Again, this is your time to be here on your mat. This is your time to do great things for your body and for your mind. I know the checklists and the things tend to step into our brains at some point, but just as best you can, set all the things aside and just try to be here. Try to really enjoy this time in your body. Let's take another big breath in. And then just a little forward tilt as you exhale, move towards a forward fold, and that, said very much in a relative way here. So you can stay fairly high up, you can come way down, you can put some sort of a prop underneath your elbows. So however far your forward fold takes you this morning, it's all good. There's no, prize for bringing your head to the floor. I want you to just find that position that kind of balances out, again, all the different things you might be feeling in your body. So you do want to try to make sure those sit bones stay anchored. We're not actually lifting off the floor. You want to find a degree of fold here that feels okay on your low back, feels okay on your hips, feels okay on your knees. And then lastly, but probably most importantly, supports your breath. So if you can't breathe, that's always an indicator that you're probably pushing things a little bit too far. Take just a few more big breaths here. So again, nice and grounded, nice and anchored through those sit bones, but upper body can be pretty relaxed. Let's take one more big breath. And then on your next inhale, just slowly walk the hands in. We're going to restack the spine and sweep those hands nice and tall up above the head. So reach and lift, get as tall as you can. Locate your left arm and wind underneath as you exhale. So opening the shoulders a little bit here, bringing those arms into an eagle bind. Now you can also take a bear hug with your left arm underneath. So if that eagle wrap just puts too much strain on your shoulders, simply grab your opposite shoulder blades. Both options, I want you to try to really shrug those shoulders back and down. But if you are winding the arms, you can keep the shoulders down, but start to lift the elbows just a little bit. Doesn't have to be anything big, just enough. It's almost like a little tug of war you start to feel around those shoulder blades. So again, you know your body best. You're the one actually experiencing this. So back off if needed, go more deeply if needed. Find the level, the degree that really just resonates and feels good. Let's take another big breath. And then on your inhale, we'll unwind, take a nice big reach of those hands overhead. And we're just going to switch as you exhale. So the right arm this time wraps underneath, whether you're taking that fully wound position here with the arms, or you're simply grabbing your opposite shoulders. Drop those shoulders, keep a nice tall chest, and consider lifting the elbows, maybe just a little bit. A few big breaths. Anytime we're doing something like this where there's a little pressure on the chest, just give that much extra effort to make sure that you're not closing off your chest. Let's take one more big breath. And then we'll unwind on that inhale. Again, just a nice big sweep and circle of the arms, stretch as tall as you can. Take your biggest breath out, hands return to heart. And just pause here for an inhale, sitting tall. And exhale, we'll release the hands down to the lap. Now make a mental note which leg you have crossed in front. If you're like me and tend to forget things a lot, put your water bottle on that side, do something to remember it. Swear it, take those legs up. Sometimes it's like 3 breaths, but by the time we're done resetting, it's like, wait, which side? So if you're that person, which many of us are, help yourself out a little bit. Do something to remember. But before we switch sides, I want you to take a moment, roll out your ankles, kind of shake out your legs. I know sitting like that obviously puts a good degree of pressure on the various joints and kind of tightens up the legs. So before we switch, a little TLC, let's take another breath. And then hopefully you still remember which side. So we're going to put the opposite leg in front this time. So the other leg now comes in front, which is really going to change everything up. It might feel pretty similar on your body. If you're pretty symmetrical, it might feel quite different on your bodies. A lot of bodies, one hip, one knee is a bit tighter. So you might notice at this side, a hip lifts, or it's really hard to get comfortable. So take the time to finagle a little bit, to ground, to make sure, again, you want to try to keep that pelvis as level as possible. We're going to shrug the shoulders back again. And this time, just sit with the palms lifted if that feels okay on your shoulders. It's a gesture of being open, of being receptive. And take a few moments. I want you to feel, again, with that good grounding and anchoring you're getting through the sit bones, kind of like you're lifting up here through the waistline, through the chest. So you've got that good sense of grounding, but there's a lightness to the upper body. And again, you're going to take that breath and you're just going to really fill the space. So I want you to feel the breath super strong in your rib cage. I want you to feel very connected to your breathing here, very present in your breath. Your jaw slack. And just notice what happens when you become still, when you become quiet. Where does the breath go? Where does the mind go? Stay anchored in that breath and do your best to stay here mentally. Take another big breath in. And again, we'll tilt forward as you exhale. Feel like you're setting your belly button in towards your lap. You might stay up fairly high. You might come down pretty low. So again, it is up to you. Just find the depth that works. Try to find a bit of softness here around the upper body. So shoulders can be a little bit slouchy, head can drop, as long as that all feels okay. Try to stay consciously connected to your breathing. So continuing to take those deep breaths. Take about 2 more of your biggest breaths here. And then inhale, roll yourself up. Again, lift to that tall seat. We'll reach out, reach up, expand those arms overhead. And now clasp behind your back as you exhale. You can squeeze the palms together. Take a big breath in, lift and puff the chest. Now, if clasping the hands is too much, just put your hands on your low back and squeeze the elbows towards one another. So either option works, but lift and puff, take another breath in. And then keep that clasped set of hands as you exhale, just soften a bit through the spine, more to that neutral position. Set your your hands over here onto that left hip, and then drop your left ear towards your left shoulder. Now, if in doing so, this all becomes a little bit too intense, you can drop your head, but undo the hands. You can always just bring your hands back onto your lap if doing the two together is too much. And a few different options. So I want you to really feel like that right shoulder pulls now away from your ears, should give you some stretch to the right side of the neck. As long as you have a healthy neck, you can also explore just a little bit of subtle movement. So if you keep dropping the head, that's going to give you more space, but you can add a little turn, you can add a little yes, you can add a little no. Again, these typically don't have to be very big movements. So just the little subtle little bits here, kind of getting you into that neck more. Take another big breath. And then inhale, lift the head, expand that chest again, squeezing the hands behind you. And soften on exhale, hands now over to that right hip. To that right hip, right to your right shoulder. You want to stretch the left side of the neck. So if you find this side too much, bring the hands back to your lap. If it's all feeling good and you're able to take nice, long, deep breaths, you can add that little bit of exploratory movement. Just check it out on this side. Take another breath. And then inhale, lift the head. Once again, just undo the arms. Let's reach and sweep overhead. Look up if your neck is okay with that. Your biggest, deepest exhale. Hands come back to your heart. Hands can reach down to your lap, and then just give it a final little roll of the neck. You want to kind of balance things out a little bit here. And then from here, once again, we'll lean back and undo the legs. Take those legs back out to a V. Just give a little roll, a little shake. And we'll get a little stretch in through the back of the legs here. So you can take that left leg, fold it in. So the sole of your left foot just comes somewhere onto that right thigh. Any pressure on this left knee, put something under it. You can always bunch up your mat, take a blanket, a block, but sit up nice and tall. Big breath in again, connect those sit bones. And as you exhale, turn your body without lifting that left sit bone and start to hinge forward. So you're going to kind of place your torso nice and long over that straight leg. So you want to feel like you're hinging from your hips here. So you're setting your belly down towards your thigh. But if you want to round and slouch through that upper body, feel free to do so as long as your spine is okay with that. If you have anything going on, with the discs, with your vertebrae, sometimes it does not feel very good or is not very good to round the spine. So you can always stay up with a flat back if that's you. Otherwise, a few breaths. Just notice if that left sit bone starts to drift off the floor, keep it plugged down. This is going to give you a good little bit of opening into that kind of left side of your low back, and then spine in general. Obviously, we're getting into the hamstring a bit too. Take a couple more breaths. Try to let it be fairly passive. You're not trying to point or flex or do anything in particular with that right leg. One more breath. And then inhale, roll yourself right back up to seated. Let's sit tall, reach and lift the hands overhead. And just a brief twist as you exhale, turn to your left. Plug your left hand down or fingertips into the floor behind you. Right hand just connects somewhere with that straight or with that bent knee. And this time I want you to pay attention to your right sit bone. Make sure that right sit bone doesn't pop off the floor. Take one more breath in. And then exhale, release. Bring it back to center. We'll swap out the legs here. So left leg out, sole of the right foot folds in this time. And again, finagle those sit bones down, anchor to height. We'll take a breath in, sit tall. And as you exhale, turn, lean, so hinge a little bit, kind of setting your belly towards your thigh. And then once you can extend no more, you can begin to drop. Let the head hang again, as long as your neck is okay with that. Shoulders nice and soft, a little bit slouchy and rounded is fine. Breath is steady. Keep that right sit bone heavy to help really open up into the low back. Just take a couple more big breaths. And then on your next inhale, roll up. Again, all the way to your seat. Extend and lift, reach tall. And now twist right as you exhale. Plug the right hand behind you. Left hand rolls across. Left sit bone grounds. I want you to feel a connection of your sit bones, but then lift away from that. So lift up out of the waistline, lift the chest tall to the crown of the head. Take one more breath in. And again, exhale from the belly, bring it back to center. And this time we'll just fold that left leg in and just start to lift yourself back to the hands and the knees. Now you can use your blanket for a little extra padding, cushioning for the knees if you'd like. Otherwise, slide it out of the way for now. Hands back to the floor, fingers spread wide. I want you to take a moment and just soften those elbows, make sure we're not stiff and locked. And do feel free here just to move around for a couple breaths. So we're going to move into a little bit of core work here in just a moment, but let's loosen things up a little bit through that spine first. Take another big breath. And then lowering to a forearm plank here. You're going to bring your elbows down so that they come to rest right under your shoulder. Hands can clasp together and push into the floor a little bit. So before we even think about lifting your knees, I want you to pay attention to your upper body. So notice what happens when you sort of drop the chest, almost like you're coming into a puppy pose here. And then feel the difference when you engage the core, push into your arm bones and try to feel like you're pushing your chest a bit further away from the floor so that you really feel that upper back engage. Is that making sense? So now do that and you can lift your knees if you like. So just notice, try to keep that upper back nice and strong. You can always keep your knees on the floor if you like. If you're somewhere in between, maybe you're not quite ready to keep the knees off the floor, but you want a little bit more challenge, you can kind of pulse in between. You can drop the knees, lift the knees, and just take a few breaths like that. But really, we want to be able to keep those hips a little bit lower than our shoulders. Keep that upper back strong. So again, it's pushing your forearms into the floor, almost trying to puff that and round that upper back. Nothing too excessive, but keep it nice and engaged. Just take about 3 more breaths. So we're almost there, but do not rush the breath. As much as you might want to rush the core work, let's keep that breath strong. Let's take one more breath in. And then knees down as you exhale for Sphinx. Undo the hands here. Bring your hands to parallel. Roll the shoulders back. And now I want you to feel like you're stretching a bit through that front body. So you can always crawl your feet a little bit further apart here. You want them a little bit wider than your hips. And you also have the option to bring your arms further forward. So elbows coming out in front of your shoulders. That's going to put a little less intensity around your low back. Look towards the floor out in front of you. So I want you to look more towards the floor than to the wall so that your neck stays nice and long. And give it just a few more big breaths. So really try to roll those shoulders back, open and expand here through your front body. Take one more inhale. And then down all the way as you exhale, let the hands stack. We'll lift our feet off the floor and give just a little windshield wiper here. Rock of your feet from side to side. Take another breath. And then feet down to the floor. Slide your hands under your shoulders here. Let's take a nice big breath in. Engage your core. So use your core a lot. And exhale to all fours. Pushing away from the floor here. You can crawl those knees back under your hips. If you have a roll or two, we are going to take a few breaths in child's pose. But take your time if you need to reset a little bit before you drop the hips. Sometimes, again, just that extra couple of breaths that you spend exploring, that you spend moving things around can really just assist and make the postures feel that much better. So give it just a few big breaths. Let the belly drop. Let the spine be long. Take a moment, just listen to your breath, check back in with your body. One more deep breath. And then inhale, lift, push into your hands, rise back to all fours. Walk those knees back underneath your hips. Take that left hand, walk it just a little further out in front of your shoulder here. We're gonna pivot the left foot back behind us, so like a little kickstand, and then a modified side plank to step your right foot back all the way, sweep your right hand up to the sky, and then maybe start to reach your right hand towards that wall out in front of you. So again, push a lot into your left hand, push a lot into your right pinky toe, and just breathe some space to that right side. You always want to make sure anytime we're like this in a side plank, your wrist is just a little bit ahead of your shoulder, never behind it. Take another breath. And then inhale, spin that right hand straight back to the ceiling. Reach it to the wall behind you, and exhale, bring that right hand back down to the floor. Walk your knees back underneath your hips here. So come back to all fours, both hands down, both knees down. Give it just a little wag and reset. And we'll take the same thing on the other side. So this time you're gonna step the right hand forward just a little bit, make sure it's in front of your shoulder, kickstand that right foot, and then step the left foot way back, push into the pinky toe. And as your chest starts to turn, we lift and reach that left arm towards the sky, maybe even slightly forward towards that front room or front of your space. So you can intensify by pushing a little bit more into the left pinky toe and reaching a little bit longer here through the left fingers. Just take another big breath. And then inhale, reach that left hand right back to the ceiling. Exhale, cartwheel the left hand down, bring it back to the floor. We'll step again that left knee in, pivot your right foot back in. Give yourself just a moment here, reset, and then just briefly sit back onto your heels. Let's just take a little release for the wrists here. I know that side plank can put a little bit of pressure on the wrist. So bring the hands in, give a nice good shake here of the hands. And then hands back onto the mat. We'll start making our way into downward dog from here. So fingers spread nice and wide. Soften your elbows so that we're not locked out. Step your feet back just like you were coming into plank pose, and then push your hips nice and high. So hips are going to start to lift up towards the ceiling here. Hands are going to stay spaced a little wider than your shoulders. Feet are going to stay spaced a good hips width apart. The words are not coming. And then when you're in dog, movement is such a good thing. So bending your knees and straightening your knees and pushing your heels closer to the floor. Just doing all these things, you can stretch into the soles of the feet by lifting the heels really high. You can stretch into the calves by pushing down through the heels. Get into the hamstrings by kind of walking it out. Do try to keep just a little bit of softness to those elbows. And again, just be very conscious of your wrists. So spread your fingers, push down into your knuckles. It's really easy to start letting the palms of the hands kind of bubble away from the floor. The more air you have under the palms, the more weight you're putting into your wrists. So think of it that way. You want to ground as much as you can through the hands to really keep those wrists happy. Take another breath in. And then as you exhale, just creep your way forward. We're going to move into a forward fold. You feel like you're kind of rolling your belly in towards your up here. You're staying good and long here through your low back. Even if that means you're in a little bit of a squat while you do it, that is all good. When we really focus more on the hamstrings and really try to straighten those legs, that's when we tend to put a little strain on our low back. That's when we tend to get really rounded and kind of everything pulls around the pelvis here and really gets into your low back. So we want to avoid that. Keep the knees soft. Let's take a couple more breaths. Any little bit of just exploratory movement, whether it's a shift of your weight, a little sway or rock. Let's take another breath. And then your next inhale, halfway lift. Roll up to having your shoulders and your hips in about the same plane, a little bit straighter through the knees, nice and active. And then exhale, let it all go, drop the head, bend the knees more deeply. We'll inhale again, lift halfway. Pull that chest forward and exhale, fold. This time, let's take it to standing. As you inhale, push down through your feet. Let's sweep the hands, nice big lift overhead. Reach as tall as you can, and then exhale, bring your hands into your heart. We'll take a few breaths here, just with the eyes closed. So do soften your knees a little bit, just like we did in seated. Try to shrug the shoulders back, find that nice lift to the chest without it being overdone. And then just feel the body as a whole. Again, I want you to feel strong. I want you to feel stable, but not overdone. So just make sure that you're feeling it like you can stand here for a while. You're feeling very natural in this stance. At the same time, there's a bit of strength to it. And together, let's inhale here, sweep those hands up overhead, take a nice big reach, and then dive forward as you exhale, knees soften, crown of the head drops, belly rolls towards thighs as you inhale, flat back, lift up halfway. Exhale, fold, drop it back in. Inhale, we now rise, stand tall. Push your feet down into the earth, reach your hands above the head. And exhale, hands to heart. Inhale again, rise and reach. And exhale, dive down. Inhale, flat back. Exhale, fold. Inhale, stand tall, anchor down, lift and reach. And exhale, hands to heart. Inhale again, rise up. And exhale, dive forward. Inhale, flat back. And now on your exhale, right leg back. Step long into that right leg, drop down onto that right knee. You can tuck or untuck your toes, see what feels better to you, and take a breath in, lift up, reach those hands nice and wide, plug the shoulders in, try to keep your core on so that we don't pop the rib cage forward. And just take a couple big breaths. So you can always finagle a bit here as needed if you need to adjust any spacing, do anything to make this just work a little bit better on your body. But try to feel nice and lifted, nice and open. Let's take another breath in. And as you exhale, bring your hands down to your heart. We're going to stay tall through the chest, stay low through the hips. Inhale, heart start to hinge forward here. You're going to find that right elbow. And as you exhale, hook it across to your left knee here. So moving into a twist. Now, if bringing the right elbow to the knee is too much, keep the chest lifted and keep your arms straight. You can always hook your right wrist instead. So you should be turning towards your bent knee here. You should have your right wrist coming across, connecting with your left knee. Take another big breath. And then as you inhale, we'll unwind, bring it back up through center. Take a nice big lift and reach, tiny, tiny back bend if that feels okay. And then downward dog as you exhale, float back, both hands down to the floor. Left foot's gonna step back. Now just reset a little bit, release that left leg and hip. Give a nice big pedal, a nice big wiggle and shake. Take another big breath in. And as you exhale, slowly walk forward. Bring those feet back up to the top of your mat. Align the feet to parallel and inhale, flat back. Exhale, fold. Inhale, stand tall. Push down, lift up. Stretch the hands overhead. And exhale, hands to heart. Inhale, rise. And exhale, dive down. Inhale, flat back. And now right leg back on exhale. Take a nice long step with that right leg. And then step that right leg back in. And let's step your left leg back. This time, left knee down onto the floor. So we're going to come into that same lunge. Nice big breath in. Reach those hands overhead. So this time your left leg is back. Again, you want your front foot, knee, ankle, toes, hip all pretty well aligned. Plug those shoulders in. Breathe deeply. Make sure that however your arms, your hands are positioned, it feels good on your shoulders. There's really no set way it needs to be. Take one more big breath in. And then again, exhale, hands move to your heart. Shrug those shoulders back. Take a breath in here, nice and tall through the chest. And as you exhale, hinge forward. Take that left elbow now, swing it across and bring your left elbow to the outer right knee. So once again, you're turning so that your chest is facing your bent knee. You're dropping your hips. Anytime we twitch like this, we want to keep those hips pretty square. They don't really affect the low body much. It's really that upper body that we're working on. Take another full breath. And then we'll inhale, wind back to center, lift and reach those hands. Maybe a tiny back bend as you really sink the hips. And exhale, bring your hands down to the floor. This time we're just gonna step straight forward. So as you inhale, lift that back knee, perch up to your fingertips and exhale, big step. Feet move to the top of your mat. We'll inhale, halfway lift, long flat back. Exhale, fold. Inhale, we now rise. Push down, lift up, sweep those hands overhead. And exhale, hands to heart. One breath per movement, this time big breath in, reach the hands overhead. And exhale, dive down. Inhale, flat back. And now right leg, I mean it, step back. Long step, drop that right knee. Inhale, drop the hips, reach the hands, a big stretch above the head. And exhale, hands to mat. Let's step into plank, both of your feet to the back of your mat. Stay here in plank and take a big breath in. Exhale, now hips high, back to downward facing dog. Inhale, take that left leg, kick it up to the sky, extended dog. And exhale, back to that same lunge, left foot forward, right knee down to the floor. We'll inhale, lift up, take those hands overhead. And this time, open arm twist as you exhale. Take the left hand back, reach the right hand forward. Stay here to breathe in, tall chest. Maybe drop the hips just a touch as you exhale. And inhale, we'll float back through center, unwinding, hands to sky. And exhale, forward fold, both hands down to the floor, both feet move to the top of your mat. Inhale, flat back. Exhale, fold. Inhale, stand tall, push down and lift, stretch the hands overhead, and exhale, hands to heart. Big breath in, other side, reach up. And exhale, dive forward. Inhale, halfway lift. And now left leg back on exhale, big long step, left knee down. Inhale, hands reach overhead, circle and sweep. Exhale, plank, hands to floor. Step it back with that right foot and pause. Stay here as you breathe in. And exhale, downward dog, hips high. Inhale, lift your right heel, extended dog. Exhale, the right foot forward, drop back onto your left knee. And inhale, reach the hands overhead. Open arm twist as you exhale, bring the right hand back. So you're turning to face your bent knee. Stay here, big breath in, you're reaching long through the arms. Big breath out. Inhale, unwind, lift and reach those hands overhead. And exhale, forward fold, both hands down to the mat, both feet move forward. We'll inhale, flat back. Exhale, bow back in. Inhale, stand tall, push down through your feet. Let's reach the hands. And this time a little baby back bend as you exhale, cactus the arms, lift the chest, those elbows bend. Big breath in back to neutral, hands reach overhead. And close it off as you exhale, returning hands to heart. Stay here for a full breath, just resituate, readjust here as needed. And then together we'll inhale, big reach to the arms, take those hands overhead. And exhale, dive forward. Inhale, flat back. And on the exhale, right leg back, we're gonna step to warrior one. So take a nice long step with that right foot and then pivot your right heel down onto the ground. You're gonna push up into that left foot here. So hips are gonna be fairly square. If for whatever reason on your knee or your ankle that doesn't work, you can always take crescent lunge as an alternative. But best you can, you're gonna start to square those hips forward. Lift up tall through the chest. See if you can take a nice big bend into that left knee. I'm gonna keep my heel lifted because my Achilles is a little cranky today. Reach those hands up overhead. So the challenge with warrior one is just trying to keep those hips square. Don't force it, don't overdo it. Again, crescent is always a viable alternative, but as best you can, a little squaring, a nice strong bend into that front knee. Always, especially in a standing posture like this, you want to rely on your core. We don't think about our core as much when we're standing, but that keeps us from doing this. That keeps us from puffing our chest forward. That keeps us from straining our low back. So that core is always important. Take another big breath in. And then as you exhale, we're going to pivot that back heel down and turn the toes a little bit wider here. So warrior one to warrior two, you're going to widen those back toes a little bit. So now instead of chasing forward, your hips, your chest are going to face more to the side of your space. Again, I want you to really focus on dropping your shoulders. Take that front leg and just a nice super strong bend into that knee. So really do try to keep that leg strong. And just like we were when we were seated, as best you can, leveling out the pelvis a little bit. I don't want you to force it, but if you notice that that back hip is really high, just see if you can sink it down a little more to be aligned with the front hip. Take another big breath. And then inhale, reverse. Take your left hand and reach it up and back. Extended side angle as you exhale, cartwheel forward, left hand to leg, right hand on the angle, and one more like that as you inhale back into reverse. Just move that upper body, your left hand sweeping towards the wall behind you. And then exhale right back to that extended side angle. We simply cartwheel the arms. We're gonna stay here. So kind of like we did in our side plank earlier, push a lot into the pinky toe on that right foot, reach nice and long through that right arm. And you can try to use your left arm as little as possible so that you do stay engaged through that core, through that side body. Take another full breath. And then inhale back through your reverse. Sweep it up once again with that left arm. And this time hands cartwheel down as you exhale. So all the way to the floor. We lift that back heel, we drop that back knee, and now inhale into a half split, releasing into that left leg. So you're gonna walk your hands and hips back. Props can be helpful in this pose. So if you have that blanket, you can use that to bring the floor a little bit closer. If you have a block, if you have a water bottle, I have seen it all. Use whatever you need to use. Give it a few big breaths, trying to keep that right hip fairly square and always accepting any movement that feels good. If it's a little rock, if it's a little sway. Let's take one more deep breath. And then inhale, bend into that front knee again. Lift and reach those hands up overhead. As you exhale, let's take the hands behind the back, clasp them together, and just take a couple breaths, puff that chest. So feel the counter. I know when we lift the chest, we like to back out of our lunge a little bit. See if you can stay nice and low in your lunge, lift the chest, but let those two things be separate. So hips drop low, chest lifts tall. Take another big breath. And then undo the hands and inhale. Lift and reach those hands straight above the head. Hands to floor as you exhale. Let's move into plank. Soft elbows as that left foot steps back. Stay here in your plank. Let's take a big breath in. And then exhale to downward dog. All you got to do is lift those hips. You can give yourself a couple little pedals, wiggles to reset. If you'd like to lower to the hands and the knees or to come into child's pose for a few breaths, accept that option if that's what your body's asking for. Take another deep breath. And then in your next inhale, take that right leg, kick it high. Lift your extended dog and exhale, step it forward. Pivot your left heel to the ground for warrior one. So again, as you come up, I always like to start here with my hands on my hips just because it does give a little guidance with squaring those hips. So you want to keep that left pinky toe down. Your toes are a little bit more of a narrow angle than they would be in warrior two so that you can start to turn that left hip forward. Bend a lot into your front knee. And again, if it's just not working for you, you can always lift the back heel. It's all good. Take those hands overhead. And just continue to breathe. So nice deep bend into that front knee. I want you to feel the strength, the stability here in your legs. You guys are all looking great. Those of you at home, I'm sure you are too. Take a few big breaths. So feel it, feel the breath. The breath is why we're here. Take one more big inhale. And as you exhale, open to warrior two, you're gonna pivot now those left toes out a little bit wider. Keep a nice strong bend into your front knee so right leg doesn't change a whole lot. Arms move down to be having your hands in line with your shoulders. Reach it nice and active and feel almost like you're wanting to push down a little bit through the arms so that you keep those arms engaged. And breathe. Let's take one more full breath here. And then reverse warrior on inhale, reach up and back with that right arm. Extended side angle on exhale, we're just moving the upper body, tilting forward a bit, right hand down, left hand forward. Once again, as you inhale to reverse, sweep that right hand up and back. And then exhale to hold. We're going to find that extended side angle. You can find the exact degree of reach you want with that left arm, just really listening to what feels good on your shoulder. Push quite a bit into that left pinky toe. I want you to feel that whole left side of your body here, engaged. And no holding the breath, guys. Take one more big breath here. And then inhale, reverse, sweep it up a final time with that right arm. Exhale, hinge it down, cartwheel your hands to the floor, lift your back heel first, and then release your left knee right to the mat for our half split. We'll creep and crawl those hands back. Keeping the chest tall, keeping that front knee soft, but not completely locked out. If you can, walk your left hip in just a touch, just make sure it's not popping way over to the left. And breathe. Breathe like you mean it. Breathe nice and strong. Take one more big breath. And then inhale, bend into that knee. Let's lift up, reach and sweep those hands overhead. And just stay here a couple breaths as you exhale. Plug those shoulders in. Drop the hips so that you really get into that left hip flexor. Again, just a steady gaze. Take one more big breath in. And exhale, bring both hands down to the mat. Perch up to your fingertips. We'll take a breath in as that back knee rises. And a big step forward on exhale, feet to hands. Inhale, flat back. Exhale, fold. Inhale, stand it tall. Lift up, reach those hands up. And exhale, bring your hands down to your hips. Just pause, reset a little bit here through the feet. So we're gonna keep our left foot on the ground, and as you inhale, just like a little ballet toe here on the right foot. So just right up onto your big toe. Level out the hips a little bit, and then swivel that right knee open for tree pose. Now you can stay here. This might be your tree pose today. You can also lift your foot up off the floor, set it to your inner shin, not your knee. No part of your foot should be touching your knee, or use your hand for a little assist. Grab that foot and bring it right up into the inner thigh. Again, you want to avoid actually touching your knee joint here. If you have slippery pants, you got to push that much harder with your foot. So it's not just foot pushing into leg, it's leg pushing back into foot. So you want to feel like your left hip pulls back, your right knee pulls back. You can keep your hands on your hips, or you can lift up and take those arms out. Just a nice wide V, spread the fingers a little bit. Feel like you're actually working your hands a touch. Spiral the pinkies in, lift the chest. And if you still want more challenge, look up towards the sky. If you are a wobbly tree, it is simply a windy day. It is all good. Try not to force yourself to be still. Try not to tense up and lock out. Take another big breath. And then inhale, just lift the knee straight up, lift your hands straight to the sky. And exhale, hands back in, foot to floor, a little shake, a little reset. Not that bad. Let's do the other side. It's all good. It's all good. Hands to hips to start. Just kind of start by setting yourself up for success. So a couple things. Find your drishti. Find one point to look at so that we're not looking around. The more focus you have with the gaze, the more likely you are to stay stable. Spread those right toes a lot. Ground the foot without getting grippy. And then pull up first to the left big toe. Again, just notice if you lose control of that right hip, bring it back in. Fire up all these muscles right here. And then swivel that knee out. Either stay or lift the foot up to some point on the opposite leg, as long, again, as you're not touching your knee. You don't want to put your foot on your knee because you don't want to push into your knee joint and make it bend the wrong way. Again, left knee back, right hip back, leg and foot glue together. You can stay, you can inhale, lift the arms. And again, if you want more challenge, shift the gaze by lifting your gaze towards the sky. And again, once you lift your gaze, just find a drishti. You don't have to be looking at everything, just look at one thing. One more big breath. And then inhale, lift, knee up, hands up. Exhale, this time hands to heart. We're going to take that left foot, Step it back all the way, just bring your hands to the floor. And then pivot a little quarter turn over to your left so that you're in a wide stance. Adjust your feet if they're not parallel to have them pretty much aligned with one another. And then just start to shift and shimmy a few times from side to side. So just get a little release here in and around the hips, the inner thigh. Take another breath. And then inhale, you're going to pivot all the way back to face front. So you're going to bend your right knee, turn your knee and toes forward, lift your back heel. And for half pigeon, just pick that right foot up, set your right knee down so that now your right knee is out just a little bit wider than your right wrist. Untuck your back toes. Try to feel as if your hips are level and square. If you find that you're really sinking over onto one side, you can use your blanket to kind of bridge that gap if that's putting a lot of pressure on your knee or your hip. You can stay up. You can come forward, you can come down, and keep in mind that your alternative for pigeon is always going to be a figure four. So coming down onto your back, crossing that right ankle above that left knee and just hugging everything in towards your chest. It's going to give you the same stretch, targeting the exact same muscles, just without your body weight resting on your knee. So give it a few big breaths here. Simply allow yourself to melt forward. Really easy, really passive, really soft. Take one more breath. Inhale, take your time, lifting up. So head up, ground into the hands, peel the body away from the floor. And then just tuck your back toes, step it right back into a little downward dog. Give a pedal of the feet. And then we'll inhale, lift that left leg, swing the left knee forward. Now that same half pigeon, you want to set it out a little bit wider than your left wrist. Set yourself down gently. Be mindful of this side. If you need to prop up your left hip, please do. If you want to stay up or come down on this side, just do what this side asks for. If you're more comfortable in a figure four on this side, roll on your back, and this time it's your left ankle crossed onto your right thigh. Take one more of your biggest breaths. And then inhale slowly, begin to lift up. Plug into your hands, peel away. Remove any props from under that left hip if there are any, and then just set your left thigh down. Swing that right leg around. Any props that you have handy, just keep them within reach here. If you have a blanket, go ahead and just kind of fold it into a little square here. If you have a block or anything, that's fine. We're going to be taking a few breaths with our hips elevated. So if you don't have any sort of a prop, you can also roll up the front part of your mat here and use that to support your hips. So whatever works for you. But we're going to come down onto our backs and then just briefly, before we do anything else, spread the arms out, give a little windshield wiper, a little rock of your knees here from side to side. And then if you have a block, you can use a block. Otherwise, you can use that kind of tightly folded blanket here. We're going to lift our hips, place that blanket underneath our hips, so underneath our sacrum. So you're just going to get a little bit of an elevation here. So again, you can roll up your mat, you can use a blanket, you can use a block, something under kind of around where your belt would go. Reach those arms out to T. So arms out to T is just going to give you a little bit more stability. And then lift your feet to the sky. So I want you to start with some movement. Take your feet to the ceiling, pedal out your feet, scissors your feet, roll your ankles. Just try moving a bunch of different ways. And you can continue with the movement if that is good. Otherwise, feel free to just let the legs be still for a few breaths here, and still just meaning that you're not trying to move them. They're probably going to sway a little bit on their own, and that's fine. Don't tense up, don't force any stillness, just don't actively try to move. There's a little tuck of your shoulders, the palms of the hands are lifted, the jaw nice and slack. Just close your eyes. Take a few rounds here of your deepest breath. Take another big breath in. As you exhale, bend your knees. If your low back feels fine, you can squeeze your knees briefly to your chest. If you need to just get rid of whatever you're laying on, feel free to put the knees down. Take one more breath in. And then as you exhale, feet to floor if they're not. Lift your hips enough, slide any props out from underneath your hips right now. Lightly set the sacrum back down, arms back to T, and again, just a big roll, big windshield wiper of your knees from side to side. And then coming back to center on your next inhale, just grab the knees, hug the knees right into your chest, take a tight little squeeze. And on the exhale, your knees over to the left side. So arms out to T, your knees come over to the left. You're coming into a twist, and now you can always add support. Take your blanket or some prop underneath that bottom leg. You can also place the prop in between your knees if there's a big gap. So support is always a good thing, just because what it does is when you support and give your body part something to rest on, it takes strain away from the joints. And then be very conscious of your head positioning. Just find what works. Find a positioning of your head that does feel good on your neck. You're going to be here for a few big breaths, so just try to let your body get nice and settled, nice and heavy through that back body. Take one more big breath in. And as you exhale, firm the belly. Bring those knees back to center. Give yourself just a nice tight little squeeze. Take a big breath in. And we'll switch now on the exhale with your knees over to the right, your arms out to a T. Root those shoulders, conscious of your head placement. Strong and steady in your breath. Another big breath in. And as you exhale from the belly, bring those knees back to center. Hug the knees in towards your heart. Just take a nice big breath and a nice big squeeze. And as you exhale, feet back to mat. Open again those arms out to T. Give a big rock, a big windshield wiper of your knees from side to side. And any final bit of movement or wiggle or stretch or anything at all that you'd like before Shavasana, take yourself through that right now. If there's anything else at all that your body's asking for. Get yourself set up as comfortably as you can. So feel free to use any props. Feel free to just take your body into, again, any shape that feels good. There's no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. It's just a matter of getting as comfortable as you can. So feel free to spread out a little bit. You can have your knees bent or straight, your arms close or far from your body. But just lay down and get as comfortable as you possibly can. Give yourself just a little tuck of the shoulders here. Try to feel open through the chest. And together we'll take a big breath in. Take the biggest inhale you can possibly take. Pause just a moment, hold the breath. Big exhale. Let every single drop of that breath go. And as you do, now it's your chance to just completely surrender and drop in, no longer trying to control your breath, your body, or your mind. Instead, just allow yourself to completely drop in, surrender, and let go. Start to notice your breath. Just begin to breathe a bit more deeply. And as your breath expands, a few little wiggles, just subtle movements of your toes and fingers. A gentle roll of your wrists, of your ankles, slowly shaking the head no. And on your next inhale, full body stretch. Let's reach and just lengthen that body long. As you exhale, start to bend the knees, hug the knees in towards your chest and just squeeze tight. Take a big breath in. As you exhale, roll over to whichever side you're most comfortable on and pause. Take your deepest breath. Eventually pushing down into your top hand. Let's just feel your way up to a tall seat. And ending like we began, just try to find that good level pelvis here, anchored strong down through those sit bones, lifted nice and light through the crown of the head. Hands move into your heart space. And we'll close this morning with one last shared breath. As you next inhale, arms are going to circle. Take a big reach and stretch up overhead here, connecting the palms together. Exhale, hands to heart. And thank you all so much for being present here this morning to share your breath, your energy, your practice. Have a beautiful weekend. Namaste. Thank you all so much. Thank you guys all for being here. Those of you online, thank you for being here as well. Everybody stay safe. Have a great weekend.